since a lot of you are in the midst of this, thank you so much for coming and to learn how to do this correctly. And with that, we'll get started. Thank you.
All right. I feel like we are a little bit of a we could have been more of a circle, but we have a screen here and it's pretty, and we have videos we're going to show later, so we'll roll this way. So I think I know pretty much all of you. My name's Therese. I'm also with Denver Homeless Out Loud, as you all should be or are if you're here today. And today the point is we need to be out on the streets documenting when police are violating our lives, our rights on the streets. This happens on a daily basis. Everybody who's on the streets knows that interaction with cops are a daily occurrence. And those interactions are not because people are out with guns shooting people. Those interactions are because people are with tents sleeping or with a tarp laying down. Those interactions are because of survival, not because of anybody being an actual criminal. And this is wrong, and so we are here to fight it. And so today there's a few categories that we want to talk about. We want to talk about what the actual laws are, and I'll start with that and try not to get too nitty-gritty, because there's so many details in the law. And then we want to talk about when you are out documenting on the streets, filming, how to do that in a good way, where you're actually respecting the folks that are in a particular encampment or are out on the street, as opposed to doing it in a way that is harmful to the people who are directly affected. And we want to talk about kind of the video process itself. So when you're videoing, how you can narrate to explain what's going on, the specific things that you need to focus on, so that we have that as documentation for the legal fight, because this is really a battle, and it's a battle that is won with documentation that we can take to the courts, that we can win. The more documentation we have of the right things in the right way, the more chance we have to win at court. And then we'll talk a bit about filming rights, because we have certain rights to film, and there are laws that protect us so that cops can't just arrest you just for filming, even though sometimes they like to think they can and do it anyway. And then we want to talk about follow-up. So none of this means anything if we don't follow up on it, if we don't actually get that video to the right place, get the information to the lawyers that need to have it, get the information to the public and to the council and whatnot. And check back in with encampments that are moved, see how folks are doing, and so on. So that's a basic overview of kind of what we're hoping to talk about today. And I don't want to do like a whole ton of just me blabbering, but I'm going to start off with this rights laws section, because we got to know the law. If we don't know the law, then whoever does know the law has the upper hand. So it's way important to being able to enforce it. This document right here, that's called the Streets Right Walks Training. It's one of the 10 documents back there, all of which are black and white, so very confusing. But this one, it has a picture on the back called Freedom from Fear. It's a badass picture. Check out my back, super cool. So this one has a kind of a summary here, and there's a bunch of other documents that go into more detail on these laws. But starting from this, who here is familiar with the class action lawsuit settlement that just passed? A couple people.
I'm kind of familiar with it, but not too.
Okay. Raise your hand if you think the class action lawsuit settlement is about human rights. Raise your hand if you think it's about property rights. Yeah, I mean, it's basically about property rights. I put that It's not black and white, obviously, but where things get confusing with the class action lawsuit is that this lawsuit protects our property rights so that cops cannot legally just come up and take your shit without giving proper notice. That's the sum of it. There's a lot more detail. That's the sum of it. However, there's another law that still exists that makes you as a human being illegal. And what's that law? That's another one too, yeah. What's that? The camping ban, yeah. So the camping ban law, as you'll also see in here, still exists. And that law says it's illegal to use any form of protection for the elements other than your clothing. That's literally what the law says. So if you are sitting on a piece of cardboard, you're breaking the law. If you're covering yourself with a blanket, you're breaking the law. Existence is a crime if you do not have a home. That is the law that the city of Denver passed back in 2012. So that fucked up law is still on the books. And we are fighting like hell to get rid of it, and that's what we should all be in here doing, is fighting like hell to get rid of it. That said, the class action lawsuit was about the seizing of property. So there's a few different types of notices that are required before cops can take your property. Who knows what, there's two different types of notice. Who knows what those types of notices are?
48-hour notice and a
Yes, 48-hour notice, and then there's another type of notice which is a
6 month. Oh no.
6 month. That was great. I wish.
That's your property though. Now you've got 2 months to 6 months to get your property. If it was to take it.
60 days.
60
Yeah.
days. Okay.
So there's another type of notice. So there's a 48-hour notice, and there's one other type of notice that they post now that's required with the lawsuit settlement. 7 day. Yes. So what's the difference between 48-hour notice? Why do some camps get? Why I should rephrase this. Why are some camps supposed to get 48-hour notices and other camps supposed to get 7-day notices?
Number of people.
What's that?
Number of people.
Kind of. And then that's yes, basically, but not exactly. So
Location of the camp, maybe.
no, not so much the location. So this is one of these gray areas, and we all love gray areas. We should. Gray areas are horrible in the law, but that's where we're at right now. So the gray area is that the 48 hours are for what are small encampments. The 7 days are for large encampments. However, there is no definition of large encampment or small encampment. So what that means is that in reality, it's how it plays out in practice. And how it's played out in practice is generally, though not entirely, generally, if you have about 6 or 8 tents taking up about a whole block, they've been treating it as a large-scale encampment and giving the 7-day notice, generally. But as probably many people in this room can also say, sometimes that's not the case. Sometimes they've been coming in with 48-hour notices and so on. But point being, what's important for us to know when it comes to knowing these laws and knowing how we should be documenting them and so that we can enforce them, what's important is that we recognize the spirit of the law. The spirit of this, the intent of this, is that if it's a large encampment, they should have more time, 7 days, because it's going to take more time for everybody to get their stuff packed up and leave. And so that should have 7 days. And the more that we can be clear that anytime the city is trying to treat a camp as a small encampment, like it's like 5 tents and they're trying to treat it like a small encampment, when really it's more like a large encampment, the more that we can hone in on that and say, why is this camp not getting 7 days notice? The better. One other thing, there's another difference between the 48-hour and the 7-day that people should know. With the 48-hour notice, where does it have to be placed? What's that? Yeah, on your tent. It actually has to be attached to your property. Your shopping cart or your tent or whatever. It has to be attached to it. For the 7-day notice, where does it have to be placed? No. So the 7-day notice can be placed along the encampment, on the fence nearby, on posts nearby, stuff like that. So that's important too, because if you're at a camp and you're expecting the notice to be on your tent and it's not, and it was on the post and you never saw it, that can create problems. And again, this is something that the intent is that those people are supposed to be getting notice. And so if people are not getting notice because they're not putting the notices in enough places or near enough tents or telling people, then we have a problem that we should be calling them on the spirit of the law.
What kind of information needs to be posted on those notifications? What is required?
Thank you, good point. So I don't have one on hand, but some people have probably seen these. So for the 48-hour notice, there's a little line on the top that says date. And they have to fill out that date where it says when they posted it. So like 12/3/2019, 7 a.m. So that has to be on there, the date and time that it was posted, because then you know when you have 48 hours from. And it's from that date that you have 48 hours. For the 7-day notice, it does not have a little line for that to be written in. Instead, it has to say in the notice what day the camp is being posted for. So it says, this camp will be removed, blah, blah, blah. They don't say it that way. On such and such, on December 3rd, 2019, and they don't say a time. So it has to have a date on that. Other information it has to explain what the law is, which is the encumbrance law. So speaking of laws, we can just kind of jump into that. Go ahead.
So that information that's being posted, is that required by the lawsuit, or is that just how the process is developing?
That is required by the lawsuit.
So that exact information is required by the lawsuit?
Yes, so the lawsuit requires that they use these exact notices. If they're going to change the notices, they would have to notify us, and the advisory group, which we'll talk about later, would have to give input on that. The notices have to remain the same. They have to have the information of the date. They have to have the information of the place for the 7-day. It has to say the place. It has to have information on what the law is, which we'll get into in a second here. It has to have information on where to get your property, what number to call, where that property place is, what hours they have, and that you can go there to retrieve property without having your name run and free of risk of arrest. Go ahead.
I got a question. I've had officers come up and just tell us, well, this is a 48-hour notice. You can get 2 days to get your stuff. They don't even notice the door. It is just a verbal warning. They think that's good enough for us. Whenever I ask them for 48-hour notice, they tell us that they don't need to give us the notice, and that word of mouth is good enough.
So, 2 things with that. One, if they're talking about the encumbrance removal, quote unquote, what they call it, aka taking your property, that is absolutely wrong. You are right. They do have to give a written warning of that. They cannot do a verbal warning for the 48-hour notice of taking your property. That requires it be written in that exact notice attached to your tent. If they're talking about the camping ban, they don't have to do jack shit. That's a totally different story. So they can still come in and use the camping ban.
So they could come by and tell you that you have to move, but if they don't properly notify your stuff can be behind.
Yes, so they can technically, and this is one of the ironies of this whole situation, technically they can come up and arrest you for the camping ban if they follow the proper notices. So not notices, sorry. The procedures. For the camping ban, there's a little bit of procedure. It's basically just a written notice for the camping ban, and then a verbal notice, a written notice, and then they can arrest you for the camping ban. So anyway, so they could come out and arrest you for the camping ban, take you to jail, but they could not take your property right then. If they arrested you for the camping ban, they could take your property with you as evidence of a, well, they couldn't take it as evidence of a crime because that changed recently. They could take it with you to jail, but they couldn't seize it as an encumbrance. But so your property would have rights to stay there. Your property could not be taken for 48 hours, but you could be arrested.
So what happens if they fail to properly tag your property and in the process move you off the space? What's
What do you mean in the process move you off the space?
So let's say, a police officer comes by and says scram, but they don't label your property with a proper notice. How do you protect yourself and your property in that?
Well, with the camping ban still in existence, there's not, I mean, that's the question here, because with the camping ban still in existence, they can always default to that. They can always default to saying, I'm just enforcing the camping ban. They can't threaten to take your property, and that's something, if they're saying we're gonna take your property, if we get documentation, hence why we're having this conversation right here about videoing, if we get documentation of them saying, I'm gonna take your property right now, that's something we may have a case on. That's something that's pushing the violent, that's but not acceptable under the lawsuit settlement. But if they just say, you have to get out of here, that's...
So if they come by and they take your property in process of the camping ban, but they haven't documented it, they haven't labeled it, and it's recorded, there's an opportunity to hold the city liable on it.
In process of the camping ban, that's what you say?
So if the police come by and tell you to scram and they don't properly label your property and they remove it, then the city's liable for not properly labeling.
Absolutely. If the city takes your property without giving this proper notice, as just happened to folks right here, if they do that, then they have violated the settlement agreement, and there's a path to take it to court. So we're kind of jumping all over the map here, but just to kind of give that big picture, part of the class action settlement agreement is that if it's being violated, we have a way to enforce that. And it's through the Colorado State Court, and we yet to have actually taken a violation to court. So that's where this all comes in. So like the case that happened just to Tracy and Lance like the other day is very likely one that could be taken to court. But we have to have all the right documentation and so on in order to have a chance at really being successful. But so anytime that we have documentation of it being violated, that's our best chance of being able to hold them accountable for we know they violate this shit all the time, but if we don't have documentation of it, it's really hard to win in court. So let's just really quickly go back to the laws, and we've kind of like touched on them a little bit, but I just want to say a couple more things about the laws, and then we move on. A couple of loopholes that everybody should be aware of with the class action lawsuit. So it talks about it down here, the nuances or loopholes. Public property versus private property. Basically, if you're on somebody's private property, they still have the ability to have you arrested for trespassing and have you and your property removed for trespassing. So unfortunately, I mean, this doesn't actually really protect you if you're on private property. Technically, the initiative to have you arrested for trespassing or have you and your property removed has to come from the property owner. So that's something that's still it's good to to pay attention to that detail and to ask that question of like, well, is the property owner asking me to leave you? Yeah, doesn't cover private property. Other thing is public health and safety hazard. So this happened a lot prior to the settlement agreement, where the city would come in and do a big sweep with no notice and call it a public health and safety hazard risk. There is a loophole that allows for the possibility of that. If the city can document that a situation is a health risk. Hence why it's super, super important that we document also showing that it's not a health risk. That, if a camp doesn't have fruit strewn all over and mice running around, and yet it is still swept and they call it a health and safety risk, then that's the sort of thing that we could take to court and say, look, you've straight up violated these people's rights. You tried to call it a public health risk, and really the public health risk is people being swept and not having anywhere to go.
How do you document on your behalf? Do you guys say out loud or write down how you're keeping it clean and take pictures of it or something so people can believe you? Otherwise, it's just your word against theirs, right?
Yeah, exactly. So that's what today is about. Because the best form of documentation is video. Because it has sound and it has visual and all of it. So that's the best. But pictures can also be really good and effective, and sometimes it's best even just to of certain things take a picture. Like if they're trying to claim, oh, it's a health risk, if you take a picture of your tent, they'd be like, oh, look, it's not a health risk, it's totally clean. So yeah, video is best, pictures probably second best, but writing down the details can also help. So even if you don't have a camera or you didn't have one at that time or whatever, you can write out the details. And we have incident reports in the back there, and we'll talk more about incident reports at the end, but filling out the details of those incident reports is super helpful. Right?
And the incident reports may not be as powerful if you're the only one that fills one out. But if there are 100 incident reports and they're reporting the same kinds of violations over and over and over, so they become important to do not only for yourself, but for other people that are affected, and encourage other people to fill those things out. Because in mass, they're going to carry a lot of weight describing a trend. So, yeah.
Lastly, but not leastly, we'll call it good there. People can read more. If you want more details on sort of the nuances of the lawsuit settlement, there's more in here. There's also another of the many sheets of paper over there is actually the section of the lawsuit that goes into all of the detail. So grab that if you want all the nitty-gritty details. And just lastly, note that the most commonly used ordinances, laws to fuck with people for surviving is the encumbrance law, the obstruction law, park curfew, and the camping ban. There's others, but those are some of them that are most commonly used. So that's a whole lot said about laws. Is there any questions about the laws before we move on? All right, the fun stuff is done. So the next section we're going to talk about protecting people in the encampments. And I'm going to maybe just sit down and be less up in front, and just open up for a little bit of discussion on this. Especially with a mixture, because I think we have a pretty good mix of folks who are staying on the streets and folks who are housed, and so we can talk a bit about, what's best practice when you're going into somebody's encampment. I mean, somebody lives in this place, whether you may live at a different encampment and you're going over to somebody else's encampment. Or it might not be an encampment at all. It might be just a different incident with a cop that's just at the Safeway, the cop fucking with somebody at Safeway or whatever. how can we do this in a way that's respecting the needs of the folks who are directly affected first, and not, putting people in risks that are, in vulnerable situations already, and so on. I have a whole bunch of kind of notes on that end here, about, how we approach folks at a place to actually build a relationship first and say, hi, I'm so-and-so, and I'm here to document the police to make sure they don't, abuse your rights, that kind of a thing. And then, some notes on, most importantly, when you're videoing, if you're pointing a camera at a bunch of people that don't know you, it's not always the best thing. A lot of folks have very, very legitimate reasons for not wanting to be on camera. And so it's really, really critical for us that we actually respect that and not just film people that don't want to be filmed. But those are just a couple of things that I wanted to highlight about when we go into encampments and are videoing these things, what to keep in mind. But what other thoughts, best practices, values folks have about how to do this well?
Maybe give people that are influenced by other people on the street, people that people listen to, and tell them about this and want anything to change. You may not listen to other people, they will listen to them and have them start to come to things like that and involve themselves too. So other people will listen. Some people just won't listen to certain people, they're listening to people that are true. So starting to allow people to know so bad. That could be one example. A lot of people will listen to what I have to say. When we went to the city, I'm starting to talk about their education and that's what they're changing themselves. These people don't know.
Very, very good point. Yeah, thank you. Yeah. And that's all about the, actually having relationships too. And even if you're somebody that's new, maybe you're just, getting involved in getting down the streets, you don't know anybody, maybe take some time while you're there filming the cops, not just to be focused on filming the cops, which is important, but also maybe afterwards, hang around and talk to somebody for a while, get to know some people, so that you can have those relationships and know who in these areas are good point people that can get other folks involved. Yeah.
Another thing is to announce who you are and what you're about, rather than I'm some documentarian from New York that's out here to exploit what's going on, versus I live in the neighborhood. I'm working with some folks who are going to be continually out here monitoring this stuff, we're here trying to help keep from this being abused and whatnot. I'm here on behalf of Denver Homeless Out Loud. I'm here on behalf of monitoring this particular. So, let them know who you are and what you're about, and why you're there. And then, in the process, that begins to set that relationship. So if people have boundaries they want to share with you, they can do that then, or you can invite that in the process of everything else that you're doing. So that way, when people see you around, or they can say, oh, over here, so.
That's how I heard with that. It was about, I don't know if there's ever any questions about what they're doing. I can ask her or she can give me advice on what to do. That's what we've done. So,
Talking, being there. One other thing I'd say, I find a lot that, if somebody's coming into your encampment with a camera pointed at you, it can be intimidating. And, like I said, people have a lot of reasons. So something I've been doing a lot more lately is actually vocally saying, I'm pointing the cameras at the cops. I'm not pointing at you unless you're okay being on camera. And I say that right away, be very clear. The default to I'm not. All right, see you guys. Thanks for coming.
Oh, no, we're just going outside for.
Oh, okay. So defaulting to not assuming that somebody's being okay on camera, but then asking, and then if they are okay, then flip the camera and get into that conversation. And I actually find that more people are willing to be on camera when I do it that way, as opposed to if I'm just like, you know, filming everybody, and then people get frequently pissed off, and you know, like, fuck, I don't want to be on camera, blah blah. Whereas the same person will later be like, oh yeah, that's fine, if I start out by saying, like, you know. So I don't know. I mean, everybody can do it in a different way, but whatever way, like, is making sure that the people that you're in there that camping with know they're not being violated, they're not being filmed outside of their desire. Even if, so technically, legally, anybody in public space can be filmed. Legally, if you're out in public view, yes, you can be filmed. But that, like, it's not about what the actual law is here. It's about respecting folks who are, you know, needing their, you know, who are on the streets and don't want to be on camera for different reasons. Anything else about just like how to be good in our communities as we're doing this kind of? Because I mean, it can be intense, you know, because you're like dealing with cops and, you know, cops suck. Yeah.
Don't be challenging the cops and putting the community at risk if they're just wanting to pack up their things and go. You're not there to create additional problems for the folks that are incurring the sweep. You're just there to record it and report it. Because if you begin interjecting yourself and saying like, oh, I'm here on behalf of these people, they didn't ask me to be here, and I've decided I'm going to shoot my lip off. I mean, you can ask questions to get informed, but you know, don't be instigating stuff that the community may not, that's having to move, may not be comfortable with at all.
I think there's a big difference between following the lead of the instigation of someone who is at a spot and instigating something for somebody else that may or not be comfortable with that. Yeah.
Because there is some folks out in the homeless community that are fearful of getting arrested on the behalf of people who are more down for the rebellion than they are for change. And the fear is out there. And so be respectful of the community and their comfort level with that. Because while you get to go home after what happens there, they're going to see the police the next day, and the next day, and the next day, and the next day, the next week. And so they have this ongoing relationship that they need to maintain with this mess. And all it takes is one bad day to make things harder on them than it needs to be.
Like when you're filming, how does the police react to it? Do they indifferent, or are they feel threatened?
Yeah, great question. We'll get into this more in the filming rights section, but police don't like being filmed. So you know, we're all advocating that folks on the street who don't want to be filmed don't have to be filmed because we want to respect their rights and respect, you know, the needs of folks on the street. However, cops don't like to be filmed either, but we're not advocating that right be respected. Cops hate being filmed, in my experience. I mean, I interact with cops on a, you know, almost daily basis with filming, or, you know, very, very regular, and they have built up a great hatred for me because of that. And so, I mean, it does put a target on your back. I mean, as you know, maybe, you know, folks know, like, I was arrested recently while filming, really because the cops hate being filmed. They were looking for an excuse to arrest me because they hate being filmed. So yeah, I mean, they don't like it at all, is my experience. And that's something that we have to keep in mind in terms of how we protect ourselves and protect the folks on the street, because we know if they don't like being filmed that much, they don't like being called out for, you know, for being fucked up. We are, you know, taking on some risk in doing that. So yeah. Should we move on? Or anything else on this? Okay, let's move on. The next section is fun. It's interactive and entertaining. Are you ready for the next section, Ben?
Yeah.
So, sample videos and talk a bit about what we see in those videos that we can learn from for how to narrate your video, how to focus, like what needs to be focused on, and then we'll, after that, we can talk about some of the logistics of videoing, and Guillermo can give us some tips from a professional.
Alrighty, that should do it. I'm gonna do this from just right behind the computer screen, so that way I can kind of see what's going on. On this first one, I'm just gonna let it run for about 15, 20 seconds, and then I'm gonna invite you guys to have some comments, and then I got some more specific things for some of these other videos here, so.
On the other side of the street.
This is a public way.
Don't get put on the side of the street. Hi, you understand what I'm saying? You need to be on the other side.
Why?
This is closed for cleaning. So you're going to need to be on the other side of the street. Okay?
Currently, they're stealing people's stuff. They are taking people's belongings and literally putting them in trash bags and trash cans.
All right, I'm gonna stop this one right there. So what did you guys see on that as far as the coverage of what was going on?
As far as what was going on, the carpentry you said?
As far as what was happening there on that day?
It looked like the police around up the sheriff crew to come pick up trash others when he was taken, when the tables were taken or unattended, and about to throw it in the trash, and someone was filming it to let you know that's not what you're supposed to be doing, and then showing them doing it.
Well, there's a couple things on the filming here. So there's no mention of these people here. Those aren't police.
The inmates, right?
They are part of the city and part of the city workers, and in the narrative that wasn't described. And so the context was there. Also, the direction of the camera, you can barely see. There's a police car there. I mean, I was at this thing at a different time, so there's a lot of background noise from cars. What is good is that the background narration is loud and clear, so you can hear what's going on with that. And also, the other thing is, you know, like in this one, the police were giving instructions, so follow those instructions. You don't need to be getting yourself arrested or causing additional problems. Here comes the next one. Mostly what I'm showing here is you can film at night. Your light typically is going to come from the city. One of the things that's being noted here is there was half a dozen people sleeping in this little camp, but notice how many police cars were there. And so take note of just how much response that the city is having in that. And these are just people that were camping out here. This was a night when the police department was doing sweeps all up and down the river, and they were coming out in droves like this. So, but don't be afraid to do some stuff at night. Here's a little something. Yeah. So on this one, something that was going on the one earlier before, and you'll see it in other videos, is the body is moving rather than the camera, and that's part of what gets you that shaky Bigfoot camera video thing, where things are shaking and moving around. Here, I'm gonna back up a little bit. So here, instead of walking around, along with the narration, they're staying posted and the camera's following the action rather than chasing people around.
Well, can I just make a note on that?
Right.
So that's because this is Guillermo's camera, and Guillermo has a very fancy camera that has a very big zoom-in lens. So we were literally standing across the street with a tripod, and he was zoomed in way far. So that's high-quality technology there, as opposed to with a smartphone doing live stream where you have to be walking up much closer.
But one of the ways that some of that can be achieved is, I mean, if you're walking, this is going to happen with your hand. But you can take a smartphone, put it on top of a car or a light post or something. That'll help steady things out to make for a better picture. Now, here's another thing that happens in the environment that can screw up something that's going on. Here's a gentleman that's talking about his situation, and then all of a sudden the wind kicks up, and you can no longer hear this man. When earlier, oh, I meant to have it further back. So you could hear him really clearly all the way up until this point, and then the sound messed up the ability to communicate some of the information. Now, there are things that you can do to protect your microphone when things like wind comes up, and be aware of that. I mean, one of the things you can do with the cell phone, you know, is cup it and cover it with your hand a little bit, and some other stuff, or a glove or a t-shirt or things like that. Fancy equipment has fancy things that do that, but that's stuff that can affect your message. So this guy's story that was leading up to this, you lose the last half part of it because of the wind coming by. Another thing that can happen with videos is when you're recording stuff is post-production. So here's not video so much as images that were used to record this event, and then other messages. So in addition to stuff that can happen as far as recording sweeps illegally, you can also be building messages for people. Now, see, there's an example of shaky Bigfoot camera video. Is that thing's panning? That gets all shaky and everything, and the sound's not really good. As they're walking, you got shaky Bigfoot camera video. Now, some good things that are going on here, because sometimes people will get in the middle of this stuff and they will forget to get a sense of scale. So with some of these shots, the camera person was far enough back, they were getting a sense of scale of just how many people were around, how many city officials were around, how many blocks were involved in this particular suite. So there's some of that kind of stuff. Because sometimes people will get in the middle of stuff and they're inside the bubble trying to look out rather than getting on the outside of stuff, so that when people are watching it, they can get a sense of the scale. And a lot of times that can be important. Most of this stuff was from 2 or 3 years ago. Now, movement can be effective.
Notice that, yeah, that was a good image of somebody sweeping, showing like this camp is clean, there's somebody sweeping. That's a good kind of catch.
And that's things to note in your narration. There's a lot of people there, but there's no trash. Everybody's got their stuff piled and organized as best as they can, considering they don't have any place to do it. And then it's
yeah.
Let's see what shaky big, I mean, the other thing is, yeah, I think that will do it. The other thing is that people, another thing that you can do when you're filming, if and people don't want to be recorded on camera, you can hear them talking by filming their torsos while you're having a conversation. That's a way to protect them, but also get their story. So I think that's about it for this part, for examples of what it looks like and, you know, some of the challenges.
You know, with the shaking, and, of course, it shakes more if you're zoomed in. You know, so try to zoom out so you won't. It's not. A lot of people are filming like this. They shouldn't be doing like this. That's what TV looks like. It's this. It's not this. Try to hold it like this.
So I want to just make a question on that. So when I Facebook live stream, it doesn't give me an option of going sideways that I know of, unless somebody here can explain how to do that. Because when I go sideways, the video goes sideways when I'm Facebook live streaming. Yeah?
There's an option on your phone whenever it comes to the resolution areas that also says panorama, and you can change your phone into a panorama view, which is a side view.
You can do that on Facebook while live streaming?
Yep, all phones do it. All phones will allow you to do it. It's in the settings underneath resolutions.
But does that affect when you're Facebook live streaming?
It affected the. I actually got bachelor's degrees to know how to do that and how to go in the settings and okay, change all that. And if you put it into the panoramic view, even whenever you're face up, okay, it actually gives you a wider view also of what's going on, and you can do it on any phone.
So that's another thing is that before you go, if you're planning on these sweeps, they give you dates and when they're coming, and if you're going there to recording, take some time to learn your equipment, understand what the settings are, and you know, understand what you're dealing with lighting and stuff. Be there early rather than chasing people down the street. Watch them come down the street because you're already set up.
Good.
And if there's anybody out there that does need help doing that, this lady here can usually tell you where we're located. We're usually within a 6-block radius from Welton to Lawrence, and from 24th up to like 29th. We don't go any further than that. So we're usually really easy to be found. And during the day, well, you can't see it, you gotta back, and there's a brown Trex bike that's older. If you see her on it, she's always on it. If you see her, stop her, she can show you exactly what happened. And if you guys need help with saving the phone or anything, we can help you.
Are you going to cover how to do like a Facebook live stream?
Oh yeah, we said we wanted to do that, yeah. It's really, really easy. I mean, I'm horrible at Facebook. I know you do Facebook, but I'll just say it unless somebody else wants to. You just go to Facebook. You go to Facebook. Go to...
You go to Facebook on a smartphone.
Yes, on a smartphone. Thank you. Go to Facebook on a smartphone. Click Post. Scroll down to where it says Go Live, and click Go Live.
I can show you that right here on the screen. So what you would do is
You have to download the Facebook app first.
yeah, on your phone. You would need the Facebook app on your phone. So what it would look like, although the format would look a little different on your phone, is you go to your Facebook page. Then you would scroll down over here. There it is. So right there, you click Go Live. And right now that's going live on my laptop camera, but it would use your phone camera. So that's how quick and easy it is as long as Facebook's on your equipment.
So that make sense? Any other questions about that?
And it'll post automatically on Facebook and on your page.
Now, Facebook's not the only thing that'll do that. YouTube will do that as well. So YouTube will go live, Twitch will go live, several other, there's a lot of different live streaming options, but Facebook's a common one that people have, and they're basically similar to that.
Guillermo, do you want to jump in with any sort of tips or technology recommendations or anything?
One of the things you already mentioned is to like film horizontal, just because most like all the media outlets everywhere is going to be posted horizontally. So people, mainly like young generations, tend to film these ways because of Instagram or other apps. So try just a bit so you can be viewed in more platforms, and then you'll see more information. Because if you do like this, at the end of the day, it's going to become something really small. So you're going to lose a lot of detail. So that would be one of the things. I guess most of the people are going to be filming with their phones. Most of the features with the phones are going to be automatic, so you cannot adjust things. One really important thing about filming for the video quality is the contrast, and that's the difference between the light and the shade. So you might have seen some images that there's a really bright day, and then there's an alley, and the alley is in the shade, and you cannot see what's going on. That's because the difference between the white and the blacks are too big. So try to decide if something is going on and it's in the bright side, film most of the bright image. If something is going in the alley, don't stay outside, but there's also bright image. Like try to step in and try to get inside of the shade, otherwise you're not going to be able to film anything.
And another thing is know which direction the sun is. So if the sun is behind you, you can see people's faces. If the sun is behind people, you're going to see shadows.
If you cannot avoid that, because they cannot both just get as close as the shadow, as the shade, it's like predominant in the image. So that's how the phone is going to read the shades and not the bright side. So if you have a face and it's kind of in the shade, and you're too far away, it's going to be in the shade, but as you get closer, it's going to start like right out. So try to get closer. That's what I would do. Then also with the sound, you might have seen many videos that you have like a lot of wind sound, and unfortunately, you cannot clean that. That's something you cannot take out of the video. So try to avoid it, try to talk while you're walking. If it's a windy day and you want to get a testimonial of somebody, ask him or her to maybe step aside, get into a place that there's no wind, and then you can film him or her. Also try maybe to cover your phone so you can protect a little bit the microphone. That would be good. Also for stabilizing the image, maybe what I would do is don't talk while you walk. If there's something going on and you're filming it, get close, film it, and then talk. Because otherwise it's going to be like with the sound, the image, it's going to be a little bit too chaotic. So try to do that. Most of the times you're going to be filming what it's called like a sequential image. So from beginning to the end with the phone, the whole action is following it. But sometimes you can even do some editing. That means that you don't need to just like close the whole thing. You can piece it up. So you can even like tell a story with that. And that can create a lot of opportunities. For example, you can be outside and do what's called a establishing shot, show where the action is. So you can identify the street, you can then identify all that, maybe you can show all the cops and then try to get inside of the action and show what's going on and get closer. And then once everything is done, maybe you can get a few testimonials of people that were there and they can tell you what happened. So you can get the whole story like that.
The really good thing about getting a whole story like that is if we're coming out on a regular basis recording that, then we begin to have series of stories. One of the things that we have available to us when we collect this information and post it is we have a YouTube channel with several playlists, and if you collect that stuff in playlists, and if you've done some editing so it's not an hour of what happened that day versus some established shots and some things and then a little bit of follow-up, and that's like 5 or 10 minutes, people will sit down and watch that, and it can have you'd have both things. You'd have something you would turn into courts, but you'd also have something for narrative that could change the minds of decision makers and public opinion on that. So
I mean, honestly, like most of the people that watch these videos are people that are really convinced, like 99%, and maybe 1% of the people that see these videos, they don't know about it. and it would be great to cap the attention. You are competing against a lot of things, so attention span is really important. Don't post a video that is 30 minutes long. So try to shorten as much as you can. Try to take whatever you think is interesting and put it there. Sometimes they also say that the first 10 minutes are the moment when someone is going to switch to another video, but they're going to keep watching it. So if you have something that is really impactful, maybe use it there in the first few minutes and then start over the story. That is going to help to keep the attention. Also, there was one more thing. So they were talking, I think Ben and Therese were talking about narrating what's going on. I don't know if they explain why, but sometimes there are a lot of things going on. There are police cars, there are people in the streets, so you don't know what's going on. If you narrate things, then you're directing the attention of the audience to what's going on. So they understand it, and they can read better what's going on there. Otherwise, like most of the people are going to see those images, they don't know what's going on.
The other thing is for post-production stuff, if you're gonna condense something and and you forgot to narrate something, you can just write it on there. you can put little graphics on there to say, notice this guy over here in the corner and what they're doing.
I think that's it. I mean, those would be the basic tips. I would say also test it. Like everybody has a different phone, all the phones like work differently. So if you're gonna go out and film, maybe the best idea would be to try things ahead of time. Like once you are in the spot and you wanna film, sometimes you don't find things. So it's better to find them ahead of time. Test them, and then once you go out, you know what is everything. So don't try to do a Facebook Live outside, try to do that at home. So yeah.
Is there a way to edit videos that you post to Facebook Live, or is it just like the whole stream is just there?
Haven't used it. Can you get a local copy of what you posted online?
There is software to download what you post on Facebook Live, and then once you download that, you have something that you can work with to edit, but that's the process. You can't do it on Facebook. And until they came out with the software that made sense, it was a real pain. But yeah, you can just there's easy to use software where you can download it and then work with what you downloaded. I don't know much about the quality because I think the stuff that goes up on Facebook Live typically is a reduced quality. So if you're trying to record a live event and it's on Facebook Live, and then you want to produce something later, yeah, your quality's going to be low because they reduce the quality of that stuff and their images. So if you're hoping to do something with that material later, it might be better to have the original video someplace else, but that's not very timely. Sometimes, I mean, the reason why you have Facebook Live, this is happening now, we want to get a response now. And if you take time to do stuff later, that takes time. And then by the time you get everything together, if a day or two has passed or a week has passed, perhaps the moment has passed because it's no longer, because there's no longer 3 feet on the ground of snow on the ground because it melted.
Yeah, and just to comment, I think it's really important to recognize the different goals of the videoing. I mean, so one aspect of the goal is to document, police abuses such that they can be held accountable and we can have, leverage in the courts and so on. Another aspect of it is to, garner political support and human support and raise awareness and so on and so forth. And then, the doing of it live can be pretty critical for a lot of that, whereas the making a more high quality video afterwards can also be very critical for the other aspects. Different goals, different mediums. So to that point, let's talk what needs to be videoed for those two goals. So for the goal of the lawsuit enforcement, or that sort of enforcement of police abuse, there's a few things that are really important to make sure that you video. that are noted on here. One of the things is to describe the actual details of the situation. So where are you? Like I'm at California Park Avenue. It's Sunday morning. It's 8 a.m. So where, when, and then there's describe the number of police officers and other city workers. Like there's 10 cops and five city workers or whatever. And then document the notice. So if there is a notice, a 7-day notice or a 48-hour notice, make sure to document that, or document the absence of a notice is really important. And then documenting what the city is taking. So if they are taking a tent and putting it in a bin, or if they're taking a tent and putting it in the trash or whatever, documenting the things that are being taken. Those are all really important for like the ongoing enforcement of the lawsuit. And then of course, the actual human elements of people sharing their own experiences with, this is like my only property, it was being taken, or I showed up and it wasn't here, or my friend's stuff, or we're moving, we don't know where to go, and those kinds of things is obviously like super important from all the other aspects, even the legal aspect, but also the political. Anything else on like what we need to make sure and document? Okay. And then in general, anything else on the videoing process? Like everybody knows what you have on your phone, or if you don't have a phone, like, I guess that's a comment too, that if you don't have a phone or a camera, well, one thing is we may have a camera in the office that you could borrow, but another thing is potentially even asking other folks that are nearby, if there's houses that are walking by and there's a situation, you can even ask someone else, be like, hey, can you video this situation, whatnot. Go ahead, Ben.
After you capture video, the most important thing is sharing it. So for example, if you Facebook Live something and there's 10 people on your Facebook account, that's how many people that see it, and they're not necessarily the right people. So that link needs to be shared in places where it can be spread and then noted in various documents. Also, if you're not doing a live thing, if that video is not posted, bring it here. We will make a copy of it and then take that and then work with the raw footage to do other kinds of stuff. Because if it sits on your phone for a month or a year, it doesn't do anything. So until that video gets to some place where it can be shared and viewed or entered as evidence, so getting whatever it is that you record into places where it can have some impact.
Didn't follow. Yeah. Okay. Let's press on then. Let's talk about. So there's a little section in this document that everybody has that's about filming rights, and then there's also another whole one-pager that's put out by ACLU that's about filming rights. And it's important because we don't want to be unnecessarily arrested for filming. So, does everybody think that it's legal to film in public to be in public and film in public? Yes.
It's legal.
It is. You can. You have a right to be in film. So, what is it that police will typically use? If police are going to try to find a way to fuck with you for filming in public, what will they typically use? Does anybody know? One of the most common laws that they talk about, that they try to enforce on you to stop you from filming. Interference. So they'll say you're interfering with police activity, and they'll try to say you have to get away. You're interfering. blah, blah, blah. So, how do we deal with that? How do we deal with this broad sweeping law? Say that again?
We respond with, you interfering with our opponents or our spiders.
Exactly.
In a calm and polite way.
There you go, in a calm and polite way. If you're not looking to get arrested, the calm and polite way is probably good. And so there's a general thought that there's like a set number of feet away from a cop that you're supposed to be. However, that's not actually a clear-cut law. The stuff in the ACLU document kind of explains more about it, but basically, in general, if you're a few, like 6-10 feet away from a cop, then that's seen to be not an interfering distance. But the reality is there's not an exact number of feet that is like, whatever feet. However, that said, something that I've found to be effective is actually referencing feet, saying, I'm 8 feet away from you, I'm not interfering, something like that. But, it gets shady. Go ahead.
Also, knowing what it is that you're there to record. So if you're gonna pick your battle, whether you're 8 or 10 feet away from a police officer, take a step or two back and film what's going on and describe what's going on. Your purpose there isn't to press your luck to see how far in the middle of things you can get. Your purpose there is to record what's going on. And a part of that is police officers getting uppity for every little thing. Oh, step back, and you step back. Oh, step back some more, so you step back some more. You're recording their attitudes or how they're dealing with, and that's worth recording, but that's not really worth instigating.
Another aspect of this is, of course, the area closed thing. Frequently, they have been using the yellow crime tape to shut off whole areas where there's a sweep and try to do a number of things, but one of which being keep filmers out. This is something that they can use at any second, is if you step inside the yellow tape and are not actively moving stuff. And of course, they change their way of defining it all the time. I mean, sometimes I've gone in there and they've been like, oh, only if you have property in here can you be inside the yellow tape. And then other times they've been like, well, as long as you're helping somebody move their property, you can be in the yellow tape. And other times they haven't given a shit at all and they've been like, we're totally fine to be just inside the yellow tape filming. So there's a lot of inconsistency in my experience with how they actually enforce your relationship to that yellow tape as a filmer. But the yellow tape is definitely used as a tool to keep folks out, and it's a way that you could end up getting arrested if you were not careful.
And that's a good example why it's important to record and document often, to catch these variances. On the one day that you're there, it isn't worth fighting whether or not you're inside the tape or not, but if you're there and other people are there recording these things a lot, and we hear the inconsistencies of how the boundaries are applied, that's part of a narrative to communicate to people and communicate to officers. How are people supposed to manage when every day they have to deal with this when it comes by to be dealt with? The rules are enforced in a different way. But we don't get to tell that message until we're at several events over and over and over at a time.
Other things to know about rights when filming. Do you want to jump in on any of this, Mary Lynn? No? No. I mean, the basics is that we have a right to be filming. Police officers, you don't have a right to be interfering, but as long as you're, not actually interfering, then you should be charged with that. And then recognizing those area closed and, protect yourself and, And also too, if you are going to be out filming, and out filming, pushing any sort of boundaries, like, I mean, if you're gonna be like across the street and, you know, really like at a distance, whatever, you know, you're probably at less risk, but if you are gonna be kind of more up in the nitty gritty dirt of it, and more, you know, actually face to face with the cops, it is a risk. We should all be honest with ourselves about it. I mean, that there is risk. Cops don't like it. They have the potential to target you. So just knowing our basic rights, knowing like, you know, that you have a right to remain silent, knowing that you have a right to, you know, wait for an attorney, knowing that, you know, those kinds of things. There's a little know your rights flyer over there too. Everybody should have if you feel like you're not sure about what those basic rights are if you're being arrested. You know, asking them, am I being detained? Am I free to go? All that kind of thing. Anything else we want to talk about with the rights when filming? We are almost at the end of our fancy snazzy agenda here. The last thing we have listed here is follow up, which is the most important part, period, as Ben was so there's a couple things we should mention here. One is the incident reports. We haven't really talked about those. In the back, everybody should have grabbed, if you grabbed one of all the things, there's a thing back there that's an incident report. And it's mostly blank, but it has like lines and stuff. It's called Sweeps Incident Form. That is a really helpful tool to make sure that anytime there's a sort of incident that there may be a police violation of your rights or the lawsuit, that there's other city workers, you know, park rangers, anything like that, to have this as a sample form and get those details can be. That's what I'm turning into the lawyers right now. So like right now I have like a file of like 10 of these that I've been, every time they come up, I send them over to the lawyer. So far still waiting on lawyers to come through and be able to, you know, take these to court. But it's those forms that are the basics that if you don't have pictures or video, or even if you do have pictures and video, having this form filled out is really good. And it's basically just, you know, who you are, what the date is, what happened, where it happened, you know, if you had stuff taken, what was taken, did you get a notice, when did you get that notice, that kind of stuff. And if you can actually, you know, fill out that form and bring it to us, that's awesome. If you don't happen to still have one of these forms because your life is crazy and chaotic and things get stolen or, you know, blown off in the wind, that's fine too. But you can just write it out on a piece of paper, or you can come in the office, or you can email it, however works to get that basic info.
Some of the most important things to have on it, if you don't have the form to help you, is your printed name and your signature. So that way you're and then date, time, and place, and then whatever your narrative is.
Yeah, I mean, we don't actually need the signature and stuff until it goes to courts.
But if you've already signed it, that's not something that you need a notary to do later, because you'll have a date, time, and place, and then you'll have a signature, and then something that says, like, you know, all these squiggles says my name. And so that winds up becoming something to where if there is court case follow-up, you know, rather than say like, oh, let me try to remember what happened 4 months ago. I wrote it down, I signed my name, I'm accounting for what I wrote there.
Any other questions on the incident form? Yeah.
Well, actually, I'm watching some friends of mine tent right now. We've been in the room for a while, so I'm asking you to stay at the shelter. So if there was, I'd like to me if the tent doesn't belong to me, can I say I'm ready for the people that own it to come back and then they get an act from there? Or do I got to start acting from what the police officer was saying?
It doesn't have to be property that belongs. You can even fill out an incident report for somebody else.
So am I allowed to move it, or do I have to take it down because someone else's tent? And I'm watching it, you know, I can't take it off.
There's no rubber stamp on a tent that says whose tent is who, so they have no if you're using it, it's treated as yours in reality. There's no, like, the cops don't know. nobody
Sometimes they
knows.
might have appointments, they might be gone all day or something, they might need someone to watch their stuff, and the cop might come and tell me your instruction like it was mine.
Yeah, they're gonna treat it like it's yours even, yeah.
What if I told you it was someone else's store that's not mine? Do I have to comply by the same rules that, anyway, because I'm there watching it, basically?
Yeah.
So I'm responsible.
The notice still applies, and that's 48-hour notice or a 7-day notice, depending on the size of the camp.
I just gotta make sure that they get the notices when they come back, basically, that's all it is. But
And if you're watching their tent
right
and
now, I have the
they,
tents on the ground, it's not even enough, so I hope it's still
yeah,
there.
but if they show up and it's gone because you got a notice and just said, fuck it, then, you know, like,
I was at the library for a few hours just before I came here, so I'm like, okay, I'm on someone's tent, if I haven't been there in 4 or 5 hours.
Yeah.
Just sitting right outside.
Yeah.
I'm like,
always a risk.
yeah. That's the only reason I put my jacket on, I'm trying to make sure I get prepared and make sure
Yeah.
I stay good.
Yeah, we're just wrapping up right now too, so, yeah. Other things about follow-up is, just contact us if there is something, because we can reach out to the lawyers, or if you have another lawyer connection, you know, reach out to another lawyer, get more lawyers involved, we need all the fucking lawyers we can get. Posting the footage we already talked about, except for, in terms of posting the footage, if you don't have a smartphone and are not doing the live stream, do you want to say anything about how to get it off the jump drives or anything like that?
Well, whatever equipment you've recorded it on, we have various different storage devices and transfer materials to transfer it, or if you have the ability to just take the storage device out and then swap. I mean, some of them are those teeny little SMS cards, some of them are wider jump drives. I mean, and then, you know, and if you want to keep the original video stuff and just drop off some sort of storage device and swap, we could do it a million different ways. But if you don't know how, bring it here, or if you don't have the equipment, bring it here, and we have the equipment in order to get that taken care of. You just gotta wait for the files to transfer.
But once you get it off, what do you do with it? I mean, let's say, you know, in my Facebook, I don't have too many friends, not too many people are going to see it. I mean, what do you do with the footage?
Well, we have a Facebook account that has a little bit of reach locally here. We also have a Twitter account. We also have friends nationally that share this kind of stuff, and that when they share their things, we're sharing them, and when we share some of our stuff, they will be sharing it as well. So there is a broader network that if we get it posted in social media, that it can go. We also have a YouTube channel where we can collect these kinds of things. I mentioned before where we have playlists. Most of this stuff came off of a single playlist that was created 3 years ago in order to find some examples. And so with playlists, one of the things that you can do is like for, you know, like the summer of 2019, there are 20 videos that show all the different ways the police swept the camps, and there's things to be learned. You can see the inconsistencies and all of that. So you begin to create bodies of knowledge and information over time. So yeah, there's a lot of opportunities. So once it gets off, we have things in process that we can just add to a larger database.
So you're saying send it to Deal?
Yeah. Or if you've got a link, if you put something up on your own YouTube channel or Facebook or Instagram and stuff, send us a link and we can work with the link as long as as long as you're okay with it being public and allowing public permissions to share that information.
Yeah, if you have your own avenues to get stuff out, great. But if you also can share it with us, then we can keep it in files in terms of like, violations or loss of stuff. If we need to like with the class action, we had tons of videos in these files that we use to bring forth the class action. Those are all, they're parts of court cases and so on.
Like actions are done in big numbers, so at least share with you, at least you have that number that you need to add to, who we need to do something about it, right? Not just one video, so everyone has a video and they share it to you guys, and that's that, more videos.
Yeah, if we have 50 videos recorded during a season, that's different than one video that happened to go
Share
viral.
with them if you got one, just the way we get them numbers up.
Right.
All right, so I think the last point here, two last points. The last point here was just that, when possible, follow up with residents of an encampment that have been swept. If you're someone, especially if you're someone who's, well, whoever you are, whether your house or unhoused, are there to document a sweep. If you can, follow up later and go check in, see if where people moved to, whatever. That's fucking great, because this shit's ongoing, and usually if there's a sweep on one block, there's going to be a sweep on the next 2 weeks later, or less, so that kind of follow-up is really important too. And then lastly, we have a sheet of paper in the back there that has a bunch of lines on it, and you can put your contact info on there. So if you have an email or a phone, that would be great. You can get on the updates that way. And with that in mind, we can use that email list too to maybe coordinate a bit, like we were talking about with Chen earlier, when there are these, when we do know when a sweep is happening, which is not always the case, but when we do know with the 7-day notice, that gives us an opportunity to coordinate and to see like, oh, who can be there and whatnot. So if you are down to maybe be a part of this ongoing, put your email and phone down, and then we can be better at following up. Anything else in closing before we are heading out? Yeah.
Like the sweeps, like what's the best time of day to be there? Like 10 o'clock,
Yeah.
12, or
Usually about 10 when they show up.
because what happens
So
is
cops often show up even earlier though. I mean,
Yeah, between 5 and 10.
Up here, it's usually 10, and they kind of start up that way and go all the way down.
You just start by the Samaritan house and usually work your way down this way.
because I heard, oh, they're going to sweep on Tuesday, so I woke up early, 6:30, got there at 7 o'clock, waited a half hour, nothing happened. So I went home, and later in the day, I came back just because I was in part of town. I said, oh, they're sweeping. I missed it. So, yeah, it's like, I missed it.
Public Works doesn't start until 9, so you can pretty much guarantee that they won't do the actual taking of property until sometime after 9. And depending on which location you're at, that could range between 9 and this area. It's more, like she's saying, more like 10. And then when you get over that way, sometimes it gets closer to like 10:30 or 11, depending on where you're at.
And you can give like her your phone number, because we'll come running up here or call her and tell her what's going on, and she'll come down a video. So if you give her your phone number, we can get a hold of you so you can go wherever you need to go.
But that's it. So that's with the actual seizing of the property. The cops, show up at all hours.
Yeah.
So there's a whole different type of, enforcement that's going on there. And in my experience, a lot of times, especially with the 7-day notices, mostly I've experienced cops coming at about 8, between 8 and 8:30, and then the actual sweep starting somewhere between 9:30 and 10, or depending. But that's with the the sweeps that there's a little bit better process with. You actually know ahead of time. The 48-hour notices, and then just the ongoing camping ban enforcement. That's so much more sporadic and way more hectic. All right, are we there? Or anything else we